Good evening. My name is Jim Franchini. I'm the Superintendent of Schools here at the Averill Park Central School District. And we thank you for participating in tonight's Meet the Candidates event. I'm pleased to see the number of people who are interested in serving on the Board of Education, and grateful for those who are in attendance tonight, watching on the live stream, or who will view the recording of tonight's event. I am aware of the tone of the rhetoric on social media in our community. I would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone who is on the stage and in the audience that we are a school district and that we pride ourselves on modeling appropriate behavior for all of our students all the time. Please remember, they are watching. To that end, I am respectfully asking the candidates to be respectful of each other. The format for tonight is question and answer. It is not a debate. This is the format we've used in the past and has worked well. Please do not interrupt the other candidates, and please speak only when it is your turn. For our audience members, I respectfully ask that you do not clap, yell, boo, heckle, or engage before, during, or after the candidates speak. Because we wanted to provide the candidates with ample time to respond to the questions and to state their views, we did not reduce the number of questions that will be asked. This means that tonight's event will last 2 hours, or twice as long as normal, due to the number of candidates. Tonight's moderator is once again Brian Radowitz. Brian is a communication specialist from Questar 3 BOCES, and he's been assigned to Averill Park for the last 4 years. Due to his skill set, experience, and neutrality, he's extremely qualified to be our moderator, and we thank him for giving up his night away from his family to help our community. Thank you for coming, and thank you in advance for your cooperation. Enjoy tonight's Meet the Candidates event.
All right, well, thank you, Dr. Franchini, for the introduction. Just a couple extra things. We will have a time limit for each of the questions. For the introductions, you get 3 minutes for each question. It's 2 minutes, and then we'll do a wrap up of also 2 minutes. I was trying to get a timer on the screen back there, but it didn't work out. So I'm going to try to use my phone. If you hear a buzzing noise, your time's up. You can finish your thought, but kind of wrap it up once you hear that, if you go over the time limit. There were a ton of questions submitted by the community, and we tried our best I tried my best. I was the only one kind of went through it. So I had about 10 pages on the Google Doc and just tried to compile them as best I could. Got a lot of general themes in there. We'll try to hit as many topics as we can. The order of the way you guys are set up is how you're going to be on the ballot. So we try to just keep it like that. First question, we're going to run through in that order. After that, it's completely random. I went through online, made it random. Most of you will get a chance to answer first, and last, just mixed it all up. So it's equitable as best we can. So introductions from our left to our right, we have Ms. Nicole Gendron, Mr. Adam Stewart, Jen Lee Schroeder, Ms. Megan Mcgarry, Mr. Darrell Horton, Ms. Samantha Hicks, Mr. Walter T.J. Spelaine Jr., and Mr. Ronald Gibson. So we can get into our questions and try to work through this as quickly as possible. So starting off with Ms. Gendron. Our first question for any candidates that would like to look at it is behind you. I know going through 8 people, you might forget what the question was by the time it gets to you, so you can glance back to that. Start with the intros, sorry. All right, so Ms. Gendron, we'll start with you with your 3-minute introduction.
Sure. Thank you for coming this evening. As you all know, my name is Nicole Gendron, and I have a passion to be involved in my community and to make a difference. Running for the Board of Education is important to me, as I have 2 young children growing up in the district. I feel the board should consist of parents alongside professionals who have the best interest of our children, parents, staff, and community at hand. I feel most passionate about the following: individual freedom. Our great nation's backbone is built on and inspired by the bold notion that our individual God-given liberties should never be infringed upon and preserved against government intrusion. This does not exempt the school setting and that of our most vulnerable. Preservation of parental rights within the school system. Parents choose what is best for their children, not the state, not the federal government, not the school, not the current push for vaccine mandates with school nurses distributing them is an appalling thought. This top-down chain of mandatory policies pushed by bureaucrats must be broken and returned to the parents and the local district. Academics. We need to return to merit-based and core academics, not social-emotional learning courses. This type of ideology has no place in the school system. This is an overreach to a larger agenda, and we need to stop it now. Parents need to be parents, and teachers need to be teachers, teaching academics. Return to normalcy. We faced the pandemic head-on and have come out of it. Now let's get back to the way we were. There is no need for a new normal. Our children have suffered enough. They have been the ones to carry the biggest burden at the most vulnerable times of their lives. We need to return to pre-pandemic standards. We need to restore their confidence, never allowing mask mandates, as this should be a personal choice. We must provide our children freedom to grow and gain the confidence they need to become leaders of our community. Discrimination against vaccination status and segregating against our children is harmful and unacceptable. We need to go back to the basics, allowing our children to be children again. Fiscal responsibility. We need to be mindful of frivolous spending and the unnecessary tax burden it passes on to our community. We need people on the school board who are willing to evaluate the need over the want. Do we need someone to teach SEL at a cost of $300,000 in our current budget? Or can we better use this money for our support staff that are grossly underpaid? We need individuals to understand tax dollars are a sacrifice of our residents and not a bottomless slush fund. We need to understand and acknowledge the hardworking individuals who stood by our schools and children during the pandemic and reevaluate salaries, opposing to adding teachers for courses that may be unnecessary. At the end of the day, I am a wife, I am a mother, I am a small business owner with a bachelor's degree in art therapy from Springfield College. I have 2 young children who are growing up in this district. I will not stand idly by while they roll out a carpet for a greater agenda, and certainly not one that does not align with conservative and traditional values. We need to get back to the basics and stand firm on what this great country was built on: life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We need to come together as a community and a board to better serve all our students.
Thank you. As I said, if the timer goes off, we just wrap it up. That's fine. Mr. Stewart?
Thanks. Thank you all for taking the time to attend tonight. My name's Adam Stewart, and most of you probably don't know me, but I'm going to do something weird and ask you all for a favor right now, right off the bat. And it's not what you're probably expecting. Some of you think of yourselves as liberals, while others think of yourselves as conservatives. Most of you are either a Democrat or a Republican. The same is true of our candidates up here with me. Some have labeled themselves conservative and others liberal. The world's a complex place and social media overwhelms us. So we try to divide people into 2 groups quickly to make it easier for us to navigate our lives, us and them. But here tonight, we're all us's. We're all neighbors, and we all have varying degrees of liberalism or conservatism. Everyone in this room wants the same thing: the best education for our kids that we can afford. And we don't have just 2 kinds of kids in our school. We have about 2,600 different kinds of kids, and each one is different, unique, and wonderful, and has their own unique needs to be made college and career ready. So the favor I'm asking you is to forget the labels in this election. Don't just think of yourself as a liberal or a conservative. Look at each candidate and listen to everything we say without any prejudice, and then vote for the one that will ensure the best affordable education for your kids. Please invest the time to really research us. Do it for your kids, and really importantly, do it for your neighbors' kids. Having said all that, I'll talk about myself briefly. I have over 30 years of experience successfully growing local software companies. I've managed multi-million-dollar budgets, tons of projects, and hundreds of people around the world. Most importantly, I've managed great teams of people to achieve amazing results, especially where few resources were available. I make decisions based on data and always maximize quality and impact while minimizing expense. I've recently retired and have always been proud and deeply thankful for our Averill Park school system. So I'm offering you my skills at no charge. If you want them, I'll work for every student, every day. You can read my bio or go to my website for more details, and that's ap-vob.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schroeder?
Hello, my name is Jenny Schroeder. I am a former graduate of Averill Park, as were my parents and many relatives, which foster deep roots in our beautiful community. I attended Hudson Valley Community College and then the College of St. Rose. I attained my Master's of Science studying Communication Sciences and Disorders to become a speech-language pathologist, also known as an SLP or a speech therapist. I went on to work in public schools as a speech therapist in Texas, California, and New York at the elementary, middle school, and high school level. My professional work in public schools afforded me opportunities of collaboration with amazing teachers, aides, psychologists, other therapists, and administrators. Working collaboratively allowed me to optimize the student's learning environment to meet their needs in the least restrictive environment. For example, when working in a middle school, I collaborate with the language arts teacher in her vocabulary instruction. So I would utilize evidence-based vocabulary interventions in her vocabulary instruction. She would send me the curriculum vocabulary prior to the academic lesson, and I would create slideshows, utilizing therapy strategies for her to utilize when teaching vocabulary to the whole class. It was incredibly rewarding seeing my students reach their language goals while staying in the classroom. I currently provide in-home speech therapy in Rensselaer and Albany County to the pediatric population through early intervention and pediatric services. This affords me opportunities to build genuine connections with a diverse range of families, and I absolutely love what I do professionally. Personally, I am the oldest of 6 and actively involved in my siblings' academic and social paths. Our mother passed away 4 years ago at the age of 46, and at that time, my 3 youngest siblings were receiving special education services in Averill Park. My youngest sister is now a junior in Averill Park. I took on the educational rights for my siblings when my mother passed, which broadened my perspective as a caregiver. Through this journey, I also experienced firsthand the social emotional barriers a child has when they endure trauma. I also saw how supportive, responsive, and encouraging our school staff can be and how vital they are in a student's growth. In summary, I would bring to the board over a decade of professional experience in education. I also have a deep appreciation for the small town heart of our community, the families that have been here for generations. The supermarket will forever be Miller's, for those who don't know, and for those who moved here seeking a humble life and wholesome opportunities for their children. I believe you are never done learning, and as my parents always taught, you should give more than you receive. I would strive to bring balance to the board and be a fair voice for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mcgarry?
Good evening, parents, students, and community members. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of you who reached out to me earlier today in advance of the event. Your support is greatly appreciated. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mcgarry, and I am running for re-election to the Board of Education for my 2nd term. I was elected for my 1st term in 2019. I'm a resident of Averill Park Central School District for 11 years. I have 3 children attending 3 different schools in the district, although it's bittersweet to say my youngest is headed to the middle school next year. The school district and the community as a whole has been through a lot these last 3 years. To say it's been less than ideal would be a gross understatement. I'm hoping beyond hope that we're headed for better days without sickness or sadness. In my 1st term as board member, I've dedicated thousands of hours towards the mission of every student every day. In addition to budget review, policy review, audit committee, capital project discussions, and addressing the highly sensitive matters that pop up, I've acted as a conduit for parents in the community who reach out with concerns and need someone to point them in the right direction. I've been present and available. You can frequently find me grabbing a tea or some groceries at Hannaford, Miller's. And I have never turned away a parent or community member who has stopped me with a question or concern. I have done my best to maintain the balance of this role and be representative for the whole community. Tonight we gather here in hopes of gaining broader insight into the views and policies for the 8 of us who are hoping to represent Averill Park Central School District for the next 3 years. I appreciate the opportunity to serve this community, represent the students and their families, and I'm looking forward to answering the public's questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon?
All right, is this thing on? Awesome. I usually open up with a joke, but tonight I will spare you one of my horrible dad jokes. I do want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and participating in our democracy. It can be messy sometimes, but it really is critical for us to come to a well-reasoned and defended position. When this is all done, we are going to be better for it. And as an aside, especially if you vote for me. One of the candidates said something about labels versus values, or I'm sorry, he said we don't want to label each other. But really it's important that we label each other because that defines your value system. And as parents, we want to see our values reflected in our children and in our community at large. And right now, there's a really large portion of the community that doesn't feel like their values are being reflected. And all that we're trying to do is have a very honest and open conversation. I've reached out to literally dozens of teachers and community members and said, and these are people on the opposite side of the spectrum, and I've asked, will you have a conversation? And so far, most of them are unwilling, except for my really awesome neighbor, Sierra, if you're watching. Really had a great conversation today. We were complete opposite ends of the spectrum, but we really were able to walk away with understanding each other's viewpoint. And I think that is absolutely critical. So real quick, I'll be short, by the way. You're trying to get us out of here at some point. My position is pretty simple. We need to protect our students from government overreach, improve the quality of our education by emphasizing core subjects like math, science, and ELA. On top of that, and to augment that education, we need to provide the full experience by allowing and ensuring we have music and drama and any other kind of athletic opportunity or endeavor that the students may want. To do these things, we probably need to cut our reliance on education. We spend millions of dollars on our technology to provide education when we already have really great teachers that can do that. We don't need to rely on School Tool or Google Classroom. We have good, strong educators that can do that for us now. And the struggle with the technology is not helping our students. We need to provide a living wage to our non-instructional staff. They've been grossly underpaid for years and years and years. And we all know that the larger socioeconomic conditions are terrible, and they are the lowest paid people in this district, and they are struggling more than they should be, honestly. To wrap it up, I just say that I have an MBA in Information Technology Management. I've been doing artificial intelligence and intelligent automation implementations for the Department of Defense for years. I have 4 children that are amazing, and I have an amazing wife that I love dearly, and I hope to represent you and get down to business.
Thank you. Ms. Hicks? Nope, you're all set.
Hi, Samantha Hicks. You can call me Sam. I, much like everyone else, I want to thank you guys for being here. I want to thank Brian for this work and everybody who put this together. I just want to thank the community for getting me here in the first place. I was elected back in 2019. Was a big rookie and learned a ton in this past 3 years. Before I came here, before I had kids, I worked at sea. I was a mariner. I worked on sailing ships out in the ocean. I have a U.S. Coast Guard 500-ton license, and so my life was built in a hierarchical system. You had a job, you did your job, and only when everybody did their job together was everything safe and you got where you needed to go. And I've been able to bring a lot of that into this job, among other things. Not so much as a parent. Kids are too unpredictable. You guys don't need me to tell you that. But certainly here. Somebody asked me kind of at the beginning of this what I personally brought to the school board in my 3 years. And I thought about it, and the truth is, it's a consensus-based organization. We come to decisions, we do the job as a group, not as an individual. So I brought my critical thinking skills. I brought hours of looking at very dry budgets, line by line by line, looking for discrepancies. reviewing policies, not super exciting stuff. But then you have to think, why is this here? What is more information that I need to know instead of just reading and glazing over? And I like to think that I brought some critical thought, some attention to detail. And then also keeping in mind, why is the policy there, right? So those tools that are not glamorous, but have to get done. If you're gonna have strong policies. It's, you know, I came away with really two key lessons that I can look at for the next couple of years. And the first lesson really is that it's not about me, right? This position up here, it's not about any of us. It's about you guys, your families, the teachers, the service staff, and in fact, the community. A strong school means a strong community, means, you know, I talked about this in 2019. My mother was in real estate for 35 years. The single most important thing that defines your home value is how good your school system is. So it's not about me. The second thing is just how important the policies and the processes are. Again, I know that's boring, but those processes are how we take a mixed group of people, figure out what needs to be done, work with the administration, and get to where we need to go. It's certainly what got us through the last 2 to 3 years, million years of COVID. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Mr. Spelaine?
Good evening. Thanks for coming out tonight and taking part in this. You can get an actual view of what we're all about. As we know, social media can twist the truth out of something like nothing else on earth, and a lot of us rely on it for things like this. So thank you for coming out. Walter Spelaine, I'm a lifelong resident of the Averill Park School District. I was born and raised out here. I currently reside on Burton Lake Road with my wife Sharon, where we raised our daughter Lindsay. My wife, my siblings, and daughter all graduated from Averill Park and had a good experience. I attended LaSalle for some reasons after the 6th grade and graduated from there in '83. I'm a longtime community volunteer, firefighter, EMT, a proud member of previously Albany and now Rensselaer County Sheriff's Offices for 28 years. I'm familiar with contract negotiations, budgeting tax dollars. I have many certificates in regard to mental health crisis, de-escalating situations peacefully, and many, many more. But time constraints tonight, I'll be sending them over social media probably. Unless someone would like to see, I'm glad to show. I'm a huge supporter of trade-related programs as an alternative for students who may not be interested in college and all the debt that comes with it. I am extremely concerned about our taxes, particularly school. This is as much of a burden to our senior citizens nowadays as for them to have health insurance. They have to make choices. A lot of them just can't do it anymore. And I'm not certain how some of them are. They're on such limited incomes. I am pro-parental rights. I want to see the parents involved in decision-making on certain possibly sensitive subjects, and at least to know what their school curriculums are, and to go through the books as they're given to their children. I would like to see some of the American Rescue Plan funds that expire in the near future, to say the least, by 24, of which there was $4.6 million given to Averill Park School District. And there was a big mention federally that a lot of that money would be made for employee retention, employee rehiring, bonuses, anything to get people on board. Well, it's not working, and I found nothing throughout the budget where it reflects non-instructional employees. Not one nickel, other than bus routing software, which they do anyway every year. And I'm in the traditional values. That's where I'm at. Boys and girls go to school. Boys and girls come home from school. Whatever they become in the future, they become. There's no color out there. There's no race out there. There's no gender out in this audience. To me, you're taxpayers. We've got to move on like that. And certainly, I'm not about government mandates. I want the parents to be the ultimate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson?
Thank you.
First, I'd like to say I appreciate the great turnout tonight. It's great to see people that are interested in the process and willing to participate in the experience, so thank you. And secondly, I'd like to say it's an honor to share the ballot with people that are truly committed to the community. Next, I'd like to just say that, I know there are folks that share different viewpoints and perspectives, but it's my hope that the personal egos and agendas have been left in the parking lot. We're all here for the right reasons, having a conversation for the purpose of helping the community. A little bit about myself. My name is Ronald Gibson. Originally, I'm a resident of Albany. I've been a resident here in Averill Park for the last 16 years. I'm married to an amazing wife, and we have 3 kids in the school system. I've been very fortunate to be very actively involved in the community as far as coaching with Twin Town, Double Cats baseball, Averill Park Junior Warriors, to name a few. And also I've been very actively involved over the last several years, with the exception of the last 2 due to the pandemic, volunteering very heavily in schools. So I have a very good active relationship with many of the teachers in the community. My educational background is I have a BA in public communications from the College of St. Rose, where I focused on public relations. In my professional career, I'm a general manager of an IT company here located in Albany, I do a lot of mentorship. I actually mentor seniors at Waterloo High School. I've been doing that for the last 3.5 years. They're actually on the way to college in the next few months. I'm also an active member of the Salvation Army Advisory Board Committee, as well as the Food Pantry for the Capital District. So, why am I here? My reason for being here is very simple. It's not political. I firmly believe that you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. Involvement with the community is very important to me. The events of the last few years have pushed me in the direction of wanting to do more, not just for myself, but for my family and the community that's been very good to me. There are some legitimate concerns I have as a parent, taxpayer, and resident of the community, and I want to be in a position to help influence change rather than someone that complains and sits on the sidelines. I've been very fortunate to coach many of the kids in the community over the years and develop really good relationships with many of the families. That's allowed me to gain better insight into what people are looking for from the school board and the community. I believe that we need to have more community involvement and participation and collaboration to feel decisions are made from what appears to be in the back end. And we need to do a better job of having ears to the ground and having a pulse of what's really happening versus what we think people are talking about. So I'm really grateful to have the opportunity tonight to be before you and have spirited conversations with you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now we will move on to the questions. This will be 2 minutes, just as a reminder, and the questions will be behind you for anybody that loses track of what they're answering on the line. So the first question, I know some of you talked about budgeting, and this is a big issue right now. We're going through a budget vote. So how would you balance the fiscal needs of the district with the financial interests of the Averill Park community? And we're going to start this time with Mr. Stewart.
Okay, thank you. So, we have great schools, and those great schools are a selling point when someone wants to buy real estate within our districts. If you look at Zillow for Averill Park, West Sand Lake, Post Mill Homes, it will say desirable Averill Park School District. So they have a positive impact on property values today. We can make the quality of our schools even better by adding more cool programs. That quality would go up. But that quality would come as a cost because those programs would cost. And then taxes would go up. And that hurts people, makes property values go down. So there's this very careful balance that needs to be managed between how do we keep the schools great while we keep taxes down? And the challenge we have is that less and less money comes from the state every year as a percentage. So about 10 years ago, the state was paying north of 50% of our budget was coming from state taxes that you guys paid. It's our money that comes back to us from the state. Now, it's somewhere south of 50%, like 45, 46%, something like that. So every year that percentage goes down. The way I balance it is to look at what are the needs of our students. How does that impact the quality of education? How do we keep costs down while we still pay a living wage? And how do we maintain competitive schools? And I would also say, how do we, as a community, get our fair share from Albany? Because the school board can't do it, one person can't do it, but a whole community could. We could alert the media, we could get involved, and we can get a little respect for upstate New York. So I guess that's my answer.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ms. Hicks. Same question.
So I did sort of steal my line there about real estate, but it is true. Again, that being said, you can't just send good money after that. So one of the things that, again, what Adam said, coming from the state, is when you look at the formulas that by which we get tax money back, it is highly convoluted, very difficult to decipher, and somewhat uneven. So I also, second, and mentioned this at our last board meeting, the lobbying that we can do as a community and that we can do as a board with a stronger voice to get more transparency in how the foundation, which is the state money, gets apportioned to various parts, certainly of upstate, to get a better sense of what's behind that is very, it's very difficult to decipher. And I would certainly like to see it swing back in the other direction. But the other thing I wanted to point out was that I appreciate, you get a very good education and information from the administration. And, we have a tax cap. And what you don't want to do, and we don't want to do, certainly what I don't want to do is say, well, we can just go right up to that tax cap, legally we can do it, let's just do it. We don't want to do that, because just because you can, doesn't mean you should. And recognizing that impacts vary across the community, just like we say every student every day, we want to look at every family and recognize that every family is not impacted the same. One thing that I appreciate is the multi-year outlook that this administration has taken, say for the capital project, for this budget going forward, where if you back off in a given year from the tax cap, or go slightly more, but not to the most like 10, then you can even things out so nobody is getting disproportionately hit one year or another. So keeping that stability, I think is very important. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Gibson.
I feel we need to make sure we have a clear understanding of what's needed versus what's important. The students have to be the focal point. They're the reason why we're here. Also, I think the support staff and the teachers must receive the support that they need. That's going to help maintain providing educational services for our children. We look at the events of the last couple of years, and it's taken the world, back on its heels, especially our community. We're starting to slowly, gradually migrate back into things, but we're not there yet. We need to take a strong look at the programs that are currently in place and talk about what's being proposed in the future. We need to make sure the community is educated on the topics that will directly impact them. From a tax perspective, I've been able to attend several recent meetings where there's been discussion about electric buses and starting in 2027. There's been some conversation about tax increases, providing more insight to the community as to why those tax increases are coming and how it's going to have a direct impact. I think we've lacked effective communication and collaboration with the community and getting their feedback. To me, it's very important to make sure that we can go in the right direction in the future. And it's my goal, if elected to the board, to make sure that consistently happens in the future.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Gordon.
All right. Well, we have trouble with a capital T. I don't know if anyone remembers the Music Man. And the reality is that the economic cycle that we are in right now is ending. Okay? So do you understand what's happening? Inflation is crushing the economy. Go to the grocery store and buy some milk and some eggs and see what happens. Look at the bill. Then go back 2 or 3 years and look at the bill from 2 or 3 years ago. The first question I have is, who runs Albany and why do we have lower revenues from our taxes? It's not the conservatives that run Albany. So you need to look, did you vote for Cuomo? Because I know that I didn't vote for Cuomo. So what I do for work is I do technology implementations. I can tell you one thing. People eat technology for lunch. The most important resource we have is our people. So I have bad news. There's a lot of problems coming. We're not going to have the money that we did. Everyone's going to be going through a really significant economic downturn. You don't have to look at me. You need to look at your phone. You need to look at the news and see what's happening in the world. It's a lot of big problems out there. So not so exciting, but the answer is we are going to have to make hard decisions, and the focus needs to be on the technology and not our people. So we can reduce our reliance on technology, the new bus tracking system, that's an unnecessary expense. We don't necessarily need, we can prolong some of our new capital acquisition projects that we have going on. We don't need all this new equipment. We don't need to fund SEL. And another big component of this is, I haven't heard anyone mention, is the time value of money. Go ahead and raise your hand if you know what the time value of money is. Does anybody know what the time value of money is? Right now, today, we have millions of dollars less in purchasing power than we did a year ago because of inflation. That means we cannot procure the same amount of goods and services that we need for our school district. And we need to focus that money on the teachers and the non-instructional staff and not the equipment or any of these new fancy programs that are being pushed down by the CDC or the Department of Education.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Spelaine.
First up would be budget lines. Item by item, starting at the top, the highest salary in the place, the highest guy in the place, and working our way down. Not necessarily has to be, well, a comparable school district, this is what they get, well, that's what they earn. Well, it seems to me our enrollment's dropping. Maybe at the top, we could drop some money. I'm not saying no one's worth their salaries, but I'm saying maybe it needs to start there first. Transportation department. Our transportation department needs an extreme overhaul. We have buses near empty. We have lines and lines at every school every morning that even cause traffic hazards because parents don't want their kids on the bus or their kids don't want to ride the bus. I'm not sure, but they drive their kids to school instead of utilizing the buses. So that's huge. Mandates, unfunded mandates. No one saw the price of gas coming. No one saw the price of fuel oil coming. That can't be laid on anybody's lap. It just can't. That happened. That's an act of whoever the school districts have to eat it. It's nice to have a cushion, but it's not allowed. The comptroller's office overlooks things very well. We committed $386,000 to SEL. I had referenced some years back in school before it was even heard of, where there was a school counselor and the parents took care of an issue that the student might have had together, not creating programs to support these children in school. That's a lot of money. And again, the main thing is budget lines. They have to be gone through, they have to be scrutinized. There's money to be found. I'm a commissioner of a local fire department. We don't have a huge tax base. We took it over 7 years ago, myself and a few others, and we found ways to save. We make work. It costs a lot of money to run a fire district. Any piece of equipment you can think of that you can buy in a store costs 4 times as much. That's where the start is, and the parents need to speak about it.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Mcgarry.
Okay. So if we want to talk historically about the way the school budget has been balanced over the last few years, in the budget presentations, Dr. Franchini has highlighted that the way that we've absorbed some of the factors in regards to the budget, the staffing, is that when teachers retire, we cannot replace them. There's a downside to that because we are putting an undue strain on our existing teaching staff to take on more and more responsibilities in regards to teaching the same number of students. Our enrollment has not gone down to the extent that it quantifies the reduction of teachers that we have seen. And then since the pandemic, the reduction of our teaching and support staff has gone down exponentially in regards to retirements. So that is a factor, and the quality of service that we provide to our students is the most important thing that we can provide to our community. We were recently compared to a couple of school districts at the board meeting, and I wanted to drill down because in regards to how other districts manage their budget versus how we've managed our budget, I wanted to really kind of take a look at how much or how different we might be from them. One of them was Niskayuna Central School District. And so I did a little digging, and Niskayuna's budget is $93 million, over $93 million, and ours is $61 million. What's interesting about that, and when we're talking about state aid, is that Niskayuna has an economically disadvantaged population of 23%. We have an economically disadvantaged population of 25%. In 21-22, New York State increased Niskayuna's aid by 28.9%. We got 2.4%. So there's a question that needs to be asked at the state level, and I will happily lead the march if somebody will come with me, and we can try to figure out why it is that there are districts with far more tax benefits who collect, on the average, $150,000 assessment, $1,500 more per year, and they get way more funding than us. And hopefully we'll have the opportunity to circle back to this because I have more data that is relevant to the topic.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Schroeder.
Hello. I have been attending many of the board meetings this past year, and which include the ones discussing the budget. And through that, I realized that there were so many intricacies to the budget that, as a taxpayer, I could not fathom unless I was there for those presentations. I felt that finding a way to convey the intricacies of the budget, how our money is used, the lack of funding that we receive from the state to the taxpayers is key in order for them to understand how their tax dollars are being used, aren't being used, why their interests are being addressed or not being addressed, and then to also ignite some of that advocacy that is needed to lobby at the state level for adequate funding for our schools. So I think a lot of this, and a lot of the issues and how we can start to bridge this is with communication and putting together a way to convey this information more clearly to the taxpayer so that we can all work together to meet the needs of the students and the interests of our community.
Thank you. And we'll wrap up this question with Ms. Gendron.
Sure, thank you. So the question was, how would I balance fiscal needs of the district with the fiscal interests of the community? And really what it comes down to is listening to what the school district and our children need versus what they want, and also being realistic as to what the taxpayers and the funding that we have that we can spend. We really need to find a balance within the budget that not only gives the children and our students in our district the opportunity to have the education and the extracurricular programs that they need, but also to allow our taxpayers to not feel like we're just spending more money frivolously, and we need to be mindful of the taxpayers that we are on budgets, we're all families, we're all businesses, we're just need to come together to have a balance to where the school can have what they need and the taxpayers cannot be taxed out of their homes, especially our senior citizen population. And we really need to find a common ground for that balance and give the children things that they need and not necessarily what the district might always want. I know as a business owner talking to customers about their contracts and remodeling their homes, people might want marble counters or floors in their bathroom, but it's not necessarily what they can get at the end of the day with their budget. And we need to understand that. And we also need to understand that our children's education and the services we provide them are most important. But we also need to be responsible with the taxpayer dollars.
Thank you. So that wraps up our first question. We'll move on to the second one. If you pay attention to our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, listen to our podcast, you'll see that our students do a ton of different things, and they do a lot of great things. They're involved in a lot of different clubs and programs. So the question is, how would you prioritize the needs of our student interests, such as the academics, performing arts, athletics, our CTE programs, and others? We start this one with Ms. Mcgarry.
Oh, we're on, okay. The students' extracurricular needs are vitally important. These are some of the activities that help bring them balance and emotional stability and some of the factors that they can't always get from an academic classroom in terms of interaction with their friends. I would like to see us expand the availability of boosters, booster clubs for other activities other than sports-related items, so that the kids would be able to raise funds for extracurricular activities that fall outside of the normal booster club operations. I also think that it's important to highlight all of the activities of the students. I do try to focus on every student operation that I see and provide information to the community via social media, and also discuss it publicly and openly, attending events as much as possible to raise awareness for all of the different activities. Our students are exceptional, and they deserve the recognition.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Schroeder.
We have a wonderful plethora of different clubs and activities for our students. And our community is very strong in providing events to fundraise for the different interests of our students. To prioritize them, I would want to see, do more of an analysis and data assessment too of the interest, how many students are interested in various things, and see if we can allocate the funding to those based on interest and number of interested students, and raising awareness of the different clubs and activities so that we could generate more interest in those activities. I do agree with what Megan said, that is key for that social emotional development and health of our students. And not every student is an A student and latches on to academics, and those clubs and those extra activities are what they need to feel accepted and for that growth and have their interests spurred for different avenues in life. So I think those are definitely fundamental to our programs and for our students. So just kind of gathering more information as to what the exact interests of our students are, and trying to kind of piecemeal and have different activities for all the various interest groups. I think it's important that we reach all of our students in that way and make sure that we're balanced as far as academics and different interest clubs. I think that is all I have to say for that one.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Spelaine.
Academics and CTE would be prioritized in, I believe, any school. We would want the students to have the best of the best that we can afford reasonably. And for the CTE, career tech ed is kind of like along the sidelines of the trade schools, which I am definitely in favor for. However, the money has to be provided. Everyone has to be offered the same education. Then we move on to, if someone wants to advance on their own, we would have to see if there was money or perhaps raising money of another source. And sports, athletics would never, in my mind, be ever cut. And performing arts, I'm not too familiar with the program is about Maple Park School District. I don't know if it's a very strong program or not, but unfortunately, it seems to me like that would be prioritized by what I know of my personal opinion. It's probably not discounting it, but just probably towards the bottom.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Gendron.
How I would prioritize the needs of the students' interests is really looking at the student body as a whole. I think that academics is very important for all our students, to give them a full balance of academics that are going to bring them into their future. Also, too, not all students are able to score high in academics, so they need an outlet somewhere else through performing arts or drama or athletics. I know for myself as a student, I struggled when it came to test taking. So having the support of teachers that was able to provide extra help and things like that is huge. And then also being able to be a well-rounded student, playing sports, being involved in the arts, instruments, things like that. So students need to have the ability to have an outlet for all their interests and not just one. And that's what makes, I think, our community, especially Averill Park, we have so many talented students in so many different areas. And really saying, how are you going to prioritize this? We really need to look at our student body and see what is most needed for our students and have a balance for everyone. and every student so they truly can get what they need out of our school district before they move on to college or trade school. They become the adults of our community and our future. Really, we have to give them what they need as students to become well-rounded individuals.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon?
I actually agree with,
All right, there we go. I agree with what Megan said, actually. I would love to see more booster involvement across all the different extracurricular activities, sports and drama and music. I think that's a phenomenal idea. And where we have agreement like that, we should move fast. We can make that happen tomorrow, hopefully. It's a non-issue, I think, for most people, so it's what we would call a just do it. Let's make it happen. There's no reason not to make those kind of things happen now. Get parents involved, get the community involved, let's make it happen. In terms of how I would prioritize these activities and topics, the schools are a single-purpose government entity, right? We understand that. That means their entire remit is to educate our children. So we should be focusing on the core math, science, and ELA, and then the extracurricular activities, they kind of fall in line after that. There's no real priority from my perspective. I like football, I like baseball. So if it's about my children, I prioritize football and baseball, and we have turf fields out there, and we'd be playing year round if I could. But really it's about what the community wants, and so the way we would prioritize it, we create a demand survey to figure out what the community wants, and we try to play it. I believe in a well-rounded education, so that means we need kids in drama club, we need kids in chess club, we need kids that do music, and we need our kids that are they're fighting on the football field. So that's kind of how I prioritize.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson?
Yes. Garnering feedback from the taxpayers is really important to be able to answer this question accurately. But from my perspective, I think academics are the most important component. I think that we need to make sure that we maintain the focus on our academics and preparing our students for the future. I think social development and social interactions halted over the last couple of years as a result of the pandemic. And we have a lot of hard work to do to try to get our kids prepared. A lot of time is lost as a result of, and it's really, I've seen a lot of children struggle as a result of. I think athletics is something that we've all seen bring this community together. Something that's really important. If any of you were involved in the girls' varsity championship run this year, you saw how close-knit that brought the community together. Despite the pandemic, despite the mask mandates, despite tax increases, despite a lot of friction and discord on social media. That was one thing that brought our community together. I think we see that during the fall season, the football team and things like that. We have a really tight-knit community. It's not just about sports. I think the performing arts is another piece that's extremely important as well. It allows our students that aren't athletic to be able to share themselves with the community, have an outlet for expression, and that's something that's really, really important. So in my opinion, I recommend in that particular order. But I really feel like we need to make sure that we're collaborating and getting feedback from the community on what's most important to them as well. And as a school board, help make some good decisions.
Thank you. Next up is Ms. Hicks.
So before you're asking how would we, move those around then with athletics, there's no question we need to educate our kids, academics, strong math, science, ELA. But I don't think I could do that because every child, teenager, et cetera, they're individual, they have different interests, and I'm not going to say, this one is more than basketball. Even to what they achieved, which was momentous, is more important than the fantastic play that I saw right up here on the stage a couple of months ago. What I will say is, as we approach this future, this uncertain future, right, what people are looking for and folks are going to come work for them. The future that these kids are coming into is one where critical thinking, teamwork, thinking around corners is what's going to be valued. It's going to be important. No doubt hard work, no doubt getting the answer correct, do the math right. But we want that whole rounded kid. And one of the things that I remember hearing and was pointed out to me, and I certainly experienced with this basketball team, because we had the pleasure of having them come through Person Hill Elementary, is that they are very well-rounded students. Citizens, I believe, was the word that was used for them, and it's true. They are not just basketball players, they are student athletes, and the fact that we as a district, one of our, big part of our job is setting the tone of the district, what we expect from our students, and to be student athletes, to be student actors. You can be fantastic up here on the stage, but if you are not achieving in your class, we're going to get you the intervention that you need, because that's the priority, is serving all parts of the student. So.
Thank you. Then we'll wrap this one up with Mr. Stewart.
I was going to joke and say no comment, but I do have comments. So we have this goal of making our students college and career ready. And everybody's going to go in different directions as students. They're all unique. And they have different talents, different skills, different ways that they're going to contribute to the world. When asked to prioritize these items, I'd be tempted to say keep academics really high and CTE really high, because that's making kids college and career ready. But I managed a team in Beijing for over 10 years. I got to know that culture, that government, and everything there. And they don't emphasize any arts. They do a lot of sports, because sports is organized and they like organization in Chinese culture, but there's relatively no art in schools at all. And art gives students the idea to create something new, to have a new vision. And so what we use China for in my business is to program new stuff. And our architects are in the US, and they design the tools that the Chinese then use. And so what I like to say is the Chinese will never invent the next iPod, but they'll figure out how to make it really cheaply. And we want to continue to be innovators in our country. And so we can't prioritize academics way, way ahead of anything dealing with art or drama or anything else. Those things are really important to our future. So we need to find ways to accommodate every student every day and accommodate all of their skills so that they can benefit the world in their best possible way.
Thank you. Move on to the third question. Mental health and social emotional issues continue to be among the top priorities of school districts across the country. What can this district do to help our students? We're going to start this question off with Mr. Gordon.
Right here, this is the roadmap for SEL. Raise your hand if you've read this 55-page roadmap. Not a lot of people out in school that have read this roadmap. This roadmap is a 5-year plan where they're going to embed critical race theory, gender theory into our school districts. When we talk about social emotional learning, that's what our teachers do already every single day. They connect with our students, they're doing a great job. We do not, and I repeat this, we do not need SEL in our schools. This is a whole CDC program. I brought a lot of show and tell up here tonight. Since there's children, I won't show it all. But there's a lot of issues with what's going on. So how do we really deal with students' social and emotional well-being? Teachers, this is my message to you. Do what you're already doing. You're doing a great job. You do not need this castle-based framework that is going to bring novel concepts into the school all the way down to the kindergarten lesson. It's critical that you understand that. If you've not read this plan, you should go pick it up. I'll give you the copy at the end of the night. The focus should be on those really intimate teacher interactions with the students that they already do. My daughter's kindergarten teacher was phenomenal. And I will tell you, I think the gods that we had, Mrs. Freeman, she's phenomenal. And most of the teachers we've interacted with are doing a great job connecting. But they need to stay in their lane, let the family values be taught at home, and avoid these government-driven values being pushed into our schools.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Hicks.
So what I've found in the last year, and even before that, is a district that is very much dialed into to where students are at, for better and worse, that are somebody here mentioned, I think Ms. Schroeder mentioned communication. The communication between the administration, the teachers, the staff, the students, of taking the pulse of the school community. That maybe isn't necessarily turned outwards towards the community members themselves, but the reports that we get, and we hear from the school principals, they know each student by name. It's quite stunning to me, actually. I sometimes forget my kids' but they do, they know the kids, and they get a sense of where they are. I know we brought, just before the pandemic, we brought on somebody in CSD who just really has the students' best interest at heart, and you can see that when you talk to them, when they report out what we as a board ask of them. And I went to the social and emotional learning forum, I don't know, again, like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, times. And it really was, it's a lot of what Mr. Ward is talking about. It's a lot of stuff that sounds familiar, what we've already done. We're just giving it a name. And even my husband, he works in manufacturing, they would call it continuous improvement, right? So it's when you put a name, say, what are we doing right? And let's do more of that. That's what I've seen coming up with the SEL program here. So continuous improvement for kids.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson.
I think it's really important just to be present, being present, understanding. I'm married to an administrator in the Albany City School District. So many times when we go out to dinner with friends or socialize at even a baseball game, or whatever the case may be, these type of conversations are popping up, right? And as I alluded to before, the last couple of years have been very tough on all of us, everyone in this room, everyone in the live stream, our students included. A lot needs to change. I think we need to ask questions, we need to understand, we need to allow parents to educate and raise their children. We need to make sure that we remove the word mandate from the vocabulary as it relates to the education system. Again, our children are very confused by all these things that have occurred. In many cases, they've been robbed of a normal childhood, and that's very sad and unfortunate. We have a couple of graduating classes that didn't have the chance to go through that senior high school experience and things like that. Things like that are really important. And it's starting to seem like children are thinking this is normal, right? So we've got to get back to basics. We've got to allow parents to, educate, raise their children to make right decisions and choices. I think we need to understand and create some programs. We need to make sure that we have outlets for our children to be able to express their creativity. Mental health is so important. I mean, we see things on the news every day, and it's very sad. If we have the ability to proactively get ahead of that before something bad happens to just one of our children, we need to make sure that we're responsible collectively. Again, those in this room, those in the live stream, those in the school board, to make sure that nothing happens to our children. And most importantly, we just need to make sure we stay focused on education. That's why we're here, to develop our kids for the future. We have to maintain that focus.
Thank you. Ms. Gendron.
So what can this district do to help students is what I find to be the main portion of this question. And I think the biggest and best thing that they can do to help our students is to provide referrals. If they find a need or a child who is in need, who needs mental health counseling, additional social emotional support, I truly feel that they need to give a referral to the families with that child in need and hand it over to the professionals. Our teachers are teachers. They have a lot on their plate. They don't need to be mental health counselors on top of what they do on a daily basis. Having an art therapy background, and that is at my first career, I worked in alternative school settings and settings with inner city children in a therapeutic setting. I know firsthand it can be very difficult, children who are suffering from mental health, social, emotional issues, for them to shut it off. So if they're engaging in this type of therapeutic intervention in school, and then they're expected to shut it off, walk out the door, go down the hall and go to English class, it's very hard for them. And we need to understand as a district that we need to draw a line somewhere. Let the professionals, the mental health counselors, provide that therapeutic services to children in need in a therapeutic setting. I find that the school district, if we have the ability to be able to have small groups for something like that, great. I know some districts do provide that, but our district, I feel that we need to really allow families to handle that in private. It can be hard for families in general, it can be hard for students. And like I said, having therapeutic services in a school setting is very difficult for children at times. They often can't just shut off their emotions and walk down the hall and go to math or gym. And it can become difficult for them to really shut down those emotions. I know firsthand, taking a child to a therapy session, it can be very emotional and difficult, and they need time to decompress from that. So I don't think the school setting is the proper setting for mental health or social emotional support. If there's a need in a child, we need to give a referral to the family to get the correct professionals there to help.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Stewart.
Thank you. So the last 2 years have been really tough on kids. The isolation, the lack of social emotional growth because of the isolation, masks, the world being all isolated, just it's miserable for kids, right? Nobody went through like that, through a situation like that when we were growing up. So we can just sort of imagine what it's like. At Averill Park, we have great teachers that are full of compassion. A bunch of them are here and they're wearing shirts that say something like, education is a balance between head and heart. And they fully embrace that and believe that. They take care of our kids and they love our kids. And nobody will argue with that, I think. So they have a passion for doing what's right for the kid. They have a parental instinct for what's right for the kid. Many of them have specialized training in those areas so they can help kids up to a degree. So I would say in this time of reacting to the last 2 years, we want to maybe use some of that federal stimulus money that's short-term and a response to COVID to provide additional aid in the classrooms and around the classrooms to help those teachers do what they do best, which is help our kids be successful at learning.
Thank you. Mr. Spelaine.
It could be hard to top Nicole's because I think we have the same notes. But I don't know that it's so much school districts' top priorities as it is the federal government mandating this and pushing it on them. So I don't have that stat, that's gonna be my opinion, I can't prove that. That seems more likely to me. And parent involvement, a referral, which is the word I wanted to use, to access a school counselor or a school professional of some sort, and then involve the parents at that point. Then the parent would make a decision on outside help, how serious the situation is. Emotional assistance is obviously vitally important to our students' well-being, but incorporating social justices into it is not. There's no reason that I would go into a little further now, but to make some students feel degraded or to blame for things that are out of their control. So as someone who needs assistance versus some other students who may be doing okay, to have to all join in the same program, I definitely I'm not a fan of that. I believe absolutely in more and more parental involvement. And the money, I believe, would be well spent elsewhere. As I said earlier, approximately $360,000 of that 4.6 million went to SEL. And I think it was better well spent elsewhere. But that's my belief.
Thank you. Ms. Mcgarry.
This is going to be difficult to summarize in 2 minutes. I want to be clear so that the community understands what social emotional learning is and what it's used for. It's being highlighted up here as identifying for children at risk with social emotional learning provides skills to all of our students to help them build coping mechanisms. It includes skill building for self-management, responsible decision-making, regulating emotions, and empathy for others. It is so important to our special needs students who are in an integrated classroom to have these skills, both from the teacher's perspective to help them work through frustrations, and also to help them manage themselves so that they can learn effectively. As it relates to when situations can arise where a referral would be made back to the parent, I agree. Parents should absolutely be involved in their children's education. It's vitally important for parents to be involved, but the parents don't always know what's going on, and so that's why education is a collaborative effort amongst the community. When you have a child, though, that has gone through a traumatic experience, and you have, I can speak for myself personally, but also for friends of mine who've had children going through situations within the school district, and we either are not able to be objective and need an objective party like a school administrator or a teacher. My daughter went through something very traumatic as she was entering her freshman year, and her teachers and the school nurse here and the administrators here helped her get to a point where she felt comfortable asking for therapy. And I don't know where we would be without their support, and I'm indebted to them. But there are other community members who have reached out to me about their children being in crisis and then not being aware of it until it sort of came to a head, and how administrators help them, de-escalate the situation and help. So it's important that we not lose sight of what these coping mechanisms are, because our suicide rate among 15 to 24-year-olds is up 200%. In the past 50 years. And we need to send our children out into the world with the skills that they need to deal with the pressures of society. And so yes, they need to solve the math problem, but they also need to solve their frustration when they don't know how to solve the math problem. And they need to know that killing themselves is not the answer to not being able to solve the math problem. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll wrap up this question with Ms. Schroeder.
To go along with what Megan was saying about the statistics of suicide over the course of the pandemic, we saw approximately a 50.2% increase in suicide attempts in teenage girls. So that statistic cannot be denied, that social emotional health is definitely something that we need to prioritize. Also, having to have had my youngest sister project negative emotions and feelings of self, I was not the first to be aware of that. The school personnel were the first to be aware of that, and then they contacted me and I sought the proper supports for her. But again, I was not the first person to be aware of that. It was school personnel. So providing them with the proper supports to assist the child through those situations, and then to immediately bridge that communication to the family is essential. It is a community process, definitely. And with social emotional learning, I connect that to cognitive behavioral training and therapy, which is something that I did in graduate school and provided to clients out of graduate school, where you take negative thought processes and you change them to a positive one. So in the essence of it, an individual will realize that you may not have control over what happens to you, or what somebody says to you, or anything that occurs in the world around you, but you have absolute control over how you respond and react to that. And providing those types of supports and that verbiage and how to get those lessons across to students, I think is essential. But again, in order for a true social emotional learning program to be the most effective, it needs to be a quick bridge to parents and community and family. It really is holistic. So navigating social and emotional needs, I think we really need to be transparent in our program and our intentions with the program, set clear goals, evaluate those goals, how we can adjust, and make sure that the communication of the language that we're using during the program can be consistent across contexts, because that is most effective for any intervention.
Thank you. So move on to the fourth question. So being a member of the Board of Education requires you to interact with and at times advocate for people who may have different beliefs, viewpoints, and or priorities than you do. Have you worked in this type of role before, where you have had to put your own feelings on an issue aside? We will start with Ms. Hicks.
So, yeah. And so, I don't know if anybody out there has worked in a maritime scenario, but there is very little personal space. You get bunk, you are told when to eat, you are eating what is put in front of you, whether it's great or whether it's mush. And you are out in the middle of the ocean. Maybe once you get to be the captain, you get to pick the folks, but before that happens, when you're coming up through the cockpit, as they say, it's you and whoever else has been hired, and there's just nowhere to go. And if you do not figure out all that stuff, get past the beliefs, the viewpoints, what have you, the consequences are dire, right? This is how people get severely injured, go overboard, just how fires start, all kinds of emergencies that I'm sure you've seen stuff like that, right? Where if you are in a firefighter team, doesn't matter what your beliefs are, you got a firefight. And thankfully, although not in all cases, this position here is not as dire day to day. And I say that recognizing that the decisions we make up here, the policies that we oversee, what we expect of the administration and the teachers and the staff as they interact with the students for whom we are charged with their care. If we do make a mistake, especially, as we're talking about mental health crises that are coming up, could have very profound and devastating impacts. And so this board functions exactly in that way. And there have been times in the last 3 years where I weighed in on something and I thought we should go one way, we went the other way, and we're all still colleagues and we got the job done and moved forward. And I see some of my colleagues out there. I like to think that we've been doing that for a while.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart, you're next.
So soon. Thank you. So, of course, I've, in my career, have had to work with people with different viewpoints, whether I was selling to them or hearing their angry phone calls about them claiming our product didn't work, or whether it was in a board meeting and we were arguing about something. The trick is to really find common ground. And in our district, we have a lot of common ground. I'm lucky enough to have my son in the audience. I won't point him out and embarrass him, maybe. But I love him an incredible amount. And I'm sure all of you in the audience feel the exact same way about your children. That's some really passionate common ground that we have. And as I said, we all want the same thing. We all want the best education that we can afford for our kids. So if we can focus on common ground, we can achieve great things together. It's just that simple, yet it's pretty hard, but that's where you need to focus.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Schroeder.
As a special education provider, I'm not just a therapist, I am a parent advocate. And I always approach these issues thinking that my feelings and my ideas are never superior to another's. We all come from different backgrounds, different experiences, and everybody has their different perceptions based on how the trajectory of their life. So yes, I definitely have managed, navigated this, working in various states and also working in Rensselaer and Albany County as an in-home therapist, I am with families of all diverse backgrounds. So professionally, I need to put their needs and their interests first, and that has to be separate. You can still be empathetic and approach issues with heart, but you cannot approach it with bias. And you have to be open and neutral and willing to learn and to shape your beliefs for the bigger goal.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Mcgarry.
I actually agree with a lot of the points that have been made. I can say over the past 3 years, in my first term on the board, there have been several instances where I disagreed with another board member, and we were able to come together under that common ground of we're all here for the same purpose, for the greater good of the school district. In my professional capacity, I'm a property and casualty insurance broker. I sell something no one wants to buy, and I have to sell it to everyone. So I work with a lot of different business owners in terms of meeting their needs, and what their personal views are none of my business. I still am required to provide them with a service. Being a public servant and serving the community means that we serve all of those in the community, not just the ones that voted for us. And so we need to find that balance and make sure that all voices are represented. In my professional capacity, I've received training that has helped me in terms of meeting that common ground, finding empathy for others, finding their point of view and walking in their shoes, and I utilize those skills in this capacity.
Thank you. And Mr. Spelaine.
Yes, every day of my career, in my profession, in firefighting, in EMS, it's constant. But you all have to achieve the greater good. You know, you may not agree with someone's doing, you may not agree with at all what they're doing, but you're not always right. And you have to compromise and look at the top of the list and, you know, here's what we need to achieve, how do we get there? So we make it work that way.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Gendron.
Yes, professionally, I don't think I've ever had a job that I've not had this situation come up, especially being in management roles in the past in healthcare field and in, you know, the art therapy setting. We all are different. We all have different beliefs, and oftentimes we have to come to a common understanding that we have an objective at the end to meet. And that's the main goal, is to really listen to one another, where each other are coming from, and come to a common ground where we can serve the greater good of everybody in our community. And I think that at times this can be the most challenging thing that you do professionally, and it can be the most rewarding thing that you do, is you really step aside and out of yourself for a moment to look at someone else's perspective. You might not have done it or realized exactly where they were until you took a moment to put yourself in their shoes. And I think that at times is most rewarding, especially in professional settings, and I'm sure will be rewarding in a setting like this and serving such a large community and in such a great community, is really having the ability to be objective at what our common goal is and where we're trying to work towards as a team. And that really is something that you have to focus on, is what is our goal in the end and how can we achieve this together for balance so that everyone can get what they need.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say, everyone take a deep breath. Hopefully everyone's having a good time up here having a conversation with the community. This is really important. I personally love this question. So the answer is yes. You know, how have I dealt with this, or how would I deal with this? I'm not here for me. This is not about me. I raise my hand because I want to work for you, right? I want to represent the community. So it's not about me. We live in a world of stereotypes. That's just the reality that we live in. I personally feel that professional business conflict is healthy, right? Because we all don't have the same ideas. We don't come from the same educational backgrounds, professional backgrounds, but that's okay. That's what makes a well-run team and a high-functioning team. So I think professional mutual respect for your colleagues is extremely important. You know, I personally believe it doesn't matter what you look like. It's who you are and the character that you exude to your community. And to your peers is something that's extremely important. I believe in effective collaboration and communication. Again, ongoing thing with me, but again, it's not, we can't look at things in a myopic lens. We need to make make sure that we're working collaboratively for the best interests of the community. And again, I think, we talk about different beliefs and backgrounds and things like that. I came to this community 16 years ago. There wasn't much diversity. I think the community's done a great job of that over the years. But again, I think that, we have a very open-minded community to where people are welcoming of all types. And it's been a really great place for us to reside.
Thank you. Then we'll wrap this one up with Mr. Gordon.
I spent 10 years in the Army as an infantryman, and I can tell you that things are very simple when you're behind a rifle. Don't do anything stupid. It's that simple. So I've been in combat zones all over the world. I've traveled all over the world in my professional life. And one of the most proud moments I had was when I was in Iraq and they had their first vote on their constitution. We were running ops for days on end, placing barriers so that bombs couldn't blow up the polling stations, so that the people would be safe when they showed up to vote. We take stuff like that for granted in this country, and I can tell you that. But at the end of it, when those people came out with that black smudge on their thumb from voting, I've never seen a more proud people in my entire life. So I've absolutely dealt with people that hate me just for being in their country, and I've stood face to face with people that wanted to kill me. And it's not a very pleasant experience, if you couldn't imagine. But at the end of the day, how you deal with it is you focus on your purpose, right? You focus on the task at hand, getting the job done, and you realize that it's something bigger than you, and it's really that simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, move on to our next question. So the district's mission statement is to meet the needs of and create opportunities for every student every day. What does that mean to you as a potential member of the Board of Education? We'll start this question with Ms. Schroeder.
One thing this kind of ties back to the question that we responded to earlier regarding the prioritization of academics, different interests, programs, and CTE, and other various interests of the student body. So meeting the needs of every student every day is, again, making sure that we have those priorities that reflect our student body, and that we have enough opportunities so that every student feels recognized and heard. So I guess I would continue to kind of circle back to that prior response and making sure that we have all of those programs to address the needs of every student every day.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Gendron.
This means to me is that we truly do provide an opportunity and an environment for every student every day. That we look objectively at who we're serving, what their needs are, and how we give them to them. That we truly do look at our student body as a whole and see that there are going to be differences, there are going to be challenges, and that we need to find common ground to serve every student every day and to give them the opportunities that they need. We may not always have the same beliefs in certain things, but we need to have the same belief in our students and that they need the opportunity to grow and to learn in a conducive environment for that, in a healthy environment. And what is right for one child might not be right for the next, and that's okay. We should be able to have the opportunity to provide our children with the resources that they need. It may not necessarily be the resources that my neighbor's child needs, but I feel that every child should have every opportunity that they need, and that we come together and find a system that we can provide that for everyone with options. That if you don't want yourself to participate in something or your child, they have the ability to opt out or leave the classroom and go somewhere else and read a book. I think that we need to have an open understanding that we're all different. We all need to come together as a community to serve our children to be the best they can be for our future.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Gibson.
Thank you. I think understanding the core mission and values is extremely important when it comes to this. Providing an opportunity for all students to have a chance to not only have a great education, but the social experiences that come with being a student of the Averill Central School District. I think we need to value the contributions and and understand it will fall or come short, when it comes to certain things. But understanding that falling short of a goal creates a life experience. And I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we can provide tools to the students to be able to help them circumvent and overcome those experiences in the future. While also stressing the importance of making sure that they can extend those lessons that they've learned to the next student to help them, and that's how we work as a community.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Hicks.
So there's the bigger picture, right? There's what we define as our priorities as a board, right? That's one of our jobs, to say what are the priorities and values. And we want to have high quality and broad-based programming. So we want folks to be able to, get that strong academic education and then meet their diverse needs in extracurriculars, in sports, in theater, in art. But that's not going to be me, right? I am no artist. I was a half decent lacrosse player. Certainly not a math teacher. And so what it means to me is to support the folks who are on the ground with the kids every day, executing that. So meeting their needs, creating those opportunities. That is, Mr. Dodge, who gets them on the bus on the mornings when I can get them to the bus on time. Getting them to school safely. The teachers, we had Ms. Primo as well. The support staff, the food service employees who are with our kids all the time. I know that as they get older, the extracurricular activities, there are a staggering number, and this adds to many teachers' work days, many parents' work days, and acknowledging that and supporting those staff, the service staff and the teachers who are one-on-one with the kids, and making those opportunities happen is a top priority for me, for us as a board, to make sure those folks are supported. I'm not doing any after school programs.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Borton.
Every student, every day, for me, it's real simple. It means we focus on the needs of the individual student at all times. It doesn't mean we focus on the wants of every student at all times. If it were up to my 8-year-old daughter, she would have ice cream for dinner every single night. And every once in a while, because I'm a good parent, I let her do that. Like last night, when she went 4-for-4 and struck out the side in her twin town little baseball game. Couldn't have been a more proud dad. So I gave her ice cream for dinner. But that is the exception to the rule. We all know that as parents, and most of you teachers are parents as well. So sometimes we're presented with issues in life and in the classroom where the student's going to express a want. Well, we have to do our best to tamp that down when necessary. They're not going to get roses every day. They're not going to get ice cream at dinner. So for me, every student every day means focusing on the needs, not the wants of every student. We have to respect the parent-child relationship. We also have to respect the child-teacher relationship. And then the last part of that trifecta is we need to focus on the parent-teacher relationship. I don't know that I always have the best communication channels with the teachers that we've had. In the elementary school levels, they've been phenomenal. This year we have another great teacher, Mrs. Hallworth, and trust her implicitly with everything that she's doing. There's no issues. So it's about the needs and not the wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mcgarry.
Thank you. So every student, every day, for me, it's a goal, right? It's something to strive for. There's always room for improvement. It is something that I follow in my professional life. And when I look at every student every day, I think about obviously the academic program, a robust academic program for a quality education. But I also think about the ability for students to come through those doors and learn freely as themselves, as the people that they are, without judgment, without reproach, without anger or hatred. I adore our Algonquin Middle School No Place for Hate program. I believe every student, every day means that no matter who you are, inside out, color, gender, whatever you feel for yourself, you should be able to come through those doors, sit in the desk, and learn effectively without anyone passing judgment or putting their opinion about who they think you should be. I do believe that every student, every day really means totally the whole person and not just the education.
Thank you. Mr. Spelaine.
Every student, every day, Averill Park's motto, which is great. So offer a curriculum which is an even learning experience for all students. Some will excel and need to advance, some won't, will need a little help. That'd be a great opportunity for teachers' aides to step in and need to be a little bit more focused on those folks. And they can monitor while the teachers are doing other tasks, and they can assist students if they need a little boost and help them get along, or recommend a different curriculum that might be a little more to their learning level at the time. Everyone's equal playing field, but every student is definitely different. And possibly an outside tutor. There's after school situations where there's older students always willing to help and tutor. Or we hired a tutor a couple times to get my daughter through some math issues, and it worked out fantastically. So every student starts out equal. We can assess the situation from there, the teachers, and recommend, which is so that what they're very good at, recommend what the students should go.
Thank you. And we'll wrap this question up with Mr. Stewart.
Thank you. So I think that our district already fully embraces every student every day. And when I first heard it, I thought, this is really aspirational. I mean, every student every day. But they really do that job. They go the extra mile, they work really long hours, they bring their own materials to school, they do whatever it takes to make every student as successful as possible every day. And when I say successful, I don't mean let's give everybody an award just for participating. No, some students will fail, and that's part of the learning process, is you learn from your mistakes so you don't repeat them and you get stronger and better. And I think our teachers do a great job of that. And we have, as I said, around 2,600 students, and they all have really unique skill sets, unique ways they're going to shine in the world. And our teachers are doing a great job of identifying those unique aspects of each child and helping them to be successful. So that's what it means to me, is over the course of 13 years, where we're taking students from 5 years old to driving adults, helping them find the right path for themselves so they can be successful as they graduate high school and go on to life.
Thank you. Our last question will be the candidate wrap-ups. They're 2 minutes each. Before we get to that, I think everybody should be aware that nobody on this panel had any questions beforehand. So to come up here and do that and spend 2 hours talking about things that you really had no idea what was coming, this takes a lot. So thank you for everybody for coming and bearing with us tonight. So candidate wrap-ups, we're going to do a reverse order from what we started. So we'll start with Mr. Gibson.
My conclusion is going to be very brief. I'm not here with an emotional agenda, but one with sincerity. I care. I care about this community. I care about the safety of all residents in Averill Park. I care about making data-driven decisions. Why? Because if you vote for a school board, you're expecting me to maintain that level of responsibility. I care about presenting a budget to our community with a basis of intelligence and one we feel confident to speak about and explain in depth if ever is. Again, it's an honor to share this ballot with such great people who I believe are here for the right reasons. My goal today was to hopefully make an impressionable, presentation of myself. in advance of the board election in a couple of weeks. I was given a stat when I handed in my petition that in the last board election, we had 14,000 people that are registered to vote, and we only had 800 show up. That can't be. You know, there's a lot of complaining and a lot of anger, a lot of discord, as I mentioned before, in this community. Again, people here in this room, on the stage, and on the live stream have the ability to change that. We need to get out there and vote. We need to represent ourselves. We need to make sure that we keep our kids in mind. And all the things that we say we don't like, we have the ability to change. It takes your vote. It takes your vote to do that. You know, commitment to your students and the community, something that's very, very important. You know, people are looking for a fresh start in this community, and I hope I've done a good job to raise my hand and say I'm willing to do that for you.
Thank you. Mr. Spelaine?
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out. It shows a lot of support for this process and a chance to hear us. I'm very honored to share the stage with these folks. It was very professional. Some of us, as to one of the last questions, some of us are facing that right now. We have different beliefs. We're all looking for the greater good. We've got a common ground, and that's at the top. Every student, every first. And we don't all think alike, but that's what life is about. It's diversity. Thank God we have it. That's the country we live in. That said, all kids are equal. I don't want anyone to, social media-wise, to think anything different of me. And I'm no secret, I'm Daryl and Nicole and myself, we are pretty aligned on most every topic. That's why we decided to join forces and attempt to get elected. We need to let kids go to school, learn to read, learn to write, learn arithmetic. And from there, follow the curriculum set forth and advance them academically year after year. We can't make young students commit and feel responsible for social inequities and emotional issues that they have no control over. I definitely do not agree with such a thing. Let them grow as they are. They will find themselves and hopefully be the best person they can possibly be. Learning that every boy and girl that they grew up with are the same as each other. No race involved, no gender involved, no phobias, just a school full of kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hicks?
So I just finished the world's longest master's degree. My recommendation is for everybody, if you want to do that, do it before you have kids. But one of my professors asked us, we had to write a paper about, wait for it, management procedures. It was a doozy. It was so much fun. I loved it. She commented on how passionate my paper was. That's, I took that as a compliment. But the interesting part behind that, and I promise it's coming, is that when we look at these issues that we've been discussing tonight, the mental health interventions that may need to happen, the adding or constraining of extracurricular activities, even time management of aides and drivers and you name it. There are processes for all these things, and getting that right means that we are not necessarily reinventing the wheel. It means, somebody's talked about evaluation, looking at what we're doing right, checking in with that. Do we need to change from that, or do we keep going? Having those processes in place and knowing what is Dr. Francini's role, what is Mr. Messia's role, what is our role as a board. Again, it may be dry, I may be like the most boring person up here, but we oversee those policies and we oversee those processes, and the way that those roll out is how we ensure that every student is in fact getting what they need every day to become that whole person that we want to put out into the world at the end of their experience here. It's how we get the job done, right? Who was talking about that? It's how we get the job done it's how we move forward. We came through the pandemic, not unscathed, but with a measure of stability that I actually didn't see in a lot of other places. And again, it may be boring, it may be dry, but recognizing we're here for the students, we're here to work together, and that's the core of what I do here and what I've done, I think, for the last 3 years.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon?
The National Teachers Union President Randy Weingarten declared that parental rights bills are how wars start. That's what she said. That's not what we said. That's not what the conservatives are saying. That's what the national leader, the largest teachers union in the country said. Because parents want to insert themselves and have control over their children's education, that's how wars start. If anyone has been inflammatory, that is the most inflammatory thing I've heard in all these discussions over the last several weeks. At the very beginning, I said, it is critical that we do this because we need to come up with a well-reasoned and defended position. That way we can produce the best product for our families and our community, and that's the students, right? Everyone up here, a lot of people said that they really appreciate diversity of thought. I agree, I do appreciate diversity of thought. Right now, 7 out of 7 school board members are liberals. Nobody wants to be labeled, but that's a fact. If you look at the voter rolls, they are liberals. They do not represent the conservative voice in this community, which is over 60% of the community. If you actually do appreciate diversity of opinion, then you should be voting for conservatives like Walter, myself, and Nicole. We have a very difficult road ahead because of what's going on in the world. I'm not trying to scare anybody, that's just reality. We need people that are going to be able to make hard decisions. There's a lot of really terrible decisions that are likely right around the corner. And my emphasis is always going to be on people first, and then we can deal with everything after that. We really need to focus on the every student every day. We need to focus on our teachers, focus on the parental rights, and really come to well-reasoned, well-defended positions so we can produce the darn best students this country's ever seen. That's aspirational, like Adam said. It's a great goal that we should all share. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mcgarry?
Thank you. I would like to say I'm really grateful for the professionalism on the stage tonight. It went quite a bit better than I was thinking it was going to go. So thank you for coming out this evening and taking the time to hear all the perspectives. I will say that I tend to speak with impactful language because I want to make sure that the person that's hearing me understands how strongly I feel about an issue. And so I do tend to sometimes be a bit intense, and it is intended and it is deliberate. On May 17th, our community will have the opportunity to decide who they believe will be the best representatives to serve our students. I will take this final opportunity to leave you with what being a member of the board means to me. The Board of Education functions as one diverse body made up of 7 parts. I'm officially moderate. The role of an individual board member is not to act alone in any personal agenda, but to work collaboratively with the other members of the board to seek consensus on issues and support the administration in the business of the school district. There are complex issues and there are hard choices. I've said this many times, it's all about the balance. We need to come together or it doesn't work. The responsibility of public service is truly unique. In an office held, we all know votes are cast and the majority wins. The victorious candidate has the challenge of representing all constituents, even those who cast their vote for someone else. The thing that makes school board elections particularly unique is those most affected by the outcome of this election have no choice in the matter at all, the students. In all of the meetings and votes and policies and debates, the students place 100% of their trust in us to come together and give consideration to all of their needs. And while the students don't get a vote, they find ways to tell us what they need. All we have to do is listen. When a high school senior uses their opportunity to speak to a group of fellow students and community members, and they highlight their goal to remove the stigma around mental health issues, we should listen. When a student writes a letter to the Board of Education asking for more attention to mental health and emotional health, we should listen. And when a student writes an article in the school paper looking for more support shown to our Lady Warriors, we should listen. And when the community comes together and votes for a Board of Education to uphold the tenets of public schooling with the desire that we work together for the greater good of all the students, we need to listen. Putting aside personal feelings, private agendas, and distractions so the board can be effective is going to be critical to the success of the district. Our students should be able to walk through these doors and learn freely. As a board, we will need to set aside differences and communicate with each other without resentment, without anger, without accusation. I am prepared to sit at the table with whomever the community chooses to do the good work of providing a complete education to our community's youth. I'm asking my fellow candidates if they're prepared to do the same. The goal is every student, every day, and that's why I'm here. Every student, every day. Thank you and good night.
Ms. Schroeder.
Thank you. This community is dear to my heart. I have lived in much more preferable climates after graduating here, and yet my heart always yearned to be here, home in Averill Park. I would feel honored to represent community members that I grew up with, who my parents went to school with, whose children I have provided services to. I hope to take my professional public school experience combined with experience working with a diverse range of families and parents to truly meet the needs of every student every day. I approach issues seeking logic and solutions and feel blessed to continuously deepen my knowledge and connect with more individuals. I hope to hear more of the community's interests and concerns and to truly connect with all community members on a deeper level. I would feel blessed to be a part of the direction of the school and would be honored to commit more time to this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
Thank you. I'd like to start by, again, thanking our candidates for their candor and professionalism tonight. Went really well, and I really appreciate that. I'd like to thank our audience, especially those watching at home, for attending tonight as well. You care about our schools, that's fantastic. Again, I ask everybody to please continue to invest time to get to know all of the candidates. Please don't limit yourself to only liberal or only conservative. I think most of us are more in the middle than at either far end. Think about your kids and think about your neighbor's kids. The Averill Park school system is great, and I'm very proud of the jobs that roughly 500 employees do to continue to achieve this. They fully embrace the mission of helping every student every day. As I said earlier, the quality of our schools keeps our property values high. And we could easily make that quality even higher by adding more cool programs. But those programs would come at a cost, which would force us to raise taxes. Higher taxes would then reduce our property values. Thus, there's a very careful balance that we need to maintain in order to get the highest quality education that we can afford and to keep AP schools great while controlling our taxes. I believe that the skills I have, that I've used to successfully run and grow companies for over 30 years make me extremely qualified to maintain this balance in the future. But of course, the decision is yours. This is a job interview, and I'm one of 8 candidates. Please research all of us and then pick the ones that you think will do the best job of providing the highest quality of education that we can afford for all of our 2,600 students. Please vote on the 17th, and please ask your neighbors to vote. We need high turnout, so the decision really represents the entire community. That's my hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gendron.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and let you know that I truly do look forward to the opportunity of serving on the board for the Averill Park School District. Myself, Daryl, and TJ have a lot of beliefs that align with one another, as we are conservative, and we do have that goal to come to the board and provide that diversity for our community. We truly feel strongly that we need to get back to the basics by preserving integrity, transparency, and liberty. We want to be with you every step of the way. We look forward to being the voice of our parents, our teachers, and our community. We can't wait to partner together for the greater good of our families, our children, our staff. We truly do want to get back to the basics and put our focus on our children, their academics, and their extracurricular activities. Our goal is to put the focus back on academics in the school and the values in the homes. The parental choice is crucial in a healthy development of our children. We truly need to allow our parents to be parents and our teachers to be teachers and come together as a community for our future and our children. Thank you and have a great night.
Thank you. And that wraps up our night. Thank everyone for coming, both in the audience and on the board, and definitely come out on May 17th to vote. Thank you.